sun was merciless that day, pouring gold and fire across the dry plains of New Mexico. A young boy, barely 16, stumbled down the dirt road that led nowhere. His clothes were torn, his boots mismatched, and his face carried the marks of hunger and exhaustion. He had no family, no home, just a name that nobody cared to remember anymore. Folks at the saloon called him Dusty because that's all he ever seemed to be covered in. He slept under wagons, begged for scraps, and fought dogs for leftovers. Yet beneath the dirt and weariness, there was something honest in his eyes, something unbroken. One afternoon, while the wind carried the sound of horses across the valley, Dusty wandered into the small trading town of Red Hollow. It was a place where the white settlers and the native tribes crossed paths, sometimes in trade, often in tension. As he approached the general store, he saw a small crowd gathered near the watering trough. There, standing alone, was an elderly native man, his grey hair braided, his face lined with years of wisdom and hardship. The man was holding a carved wooden flute, offering it for trade, but a few drunk ranchers mocked him. "Ain't no one wants your savage toys," one of them spat, knocking the flute from the elder's hands. The old man bent slowly to pick it up, but one of the ranchers kicked it aside, laughing. Dusty watched silently at first, unsure whether to intervene. But when one of them shoved the elder hard enough to make him stumble, something inside the boy snapped. Without thinking, he ran forward, placing himself between the ranchers and the old man. "Leave him alone," Dusty shouted, his voice shaking but fierce. The laughter stopped. The ranchers turned to him, their boots crunching on gravel. "Well, look what we got here," one sneered. "A stray mutt thinking he's a hero." Before Dusty could respond, the man shoved him hard to the ground. The boy fell, blood trickling from his lip, but he got back up. He didn't have much strength, but he had heart. Dusty swung wildly, landing a punch that startled the rancher more than it hurt him. For a moment there was silence. Then the others moved in. Dusty took the beating of his life that afternoon, fists and boots raining down on him until he could barely move. But he never backed away. The elder tried to intervene, only to be pushed aside again. When the sheriff finally arrived, the men scattered, leaving Dusty half-conscious in the dirt. The old man knelt beside him, pressing a hand to his shoulder. "You are brave," the elder said softly, his accent thick but his tone calm. "Foolish, but brave." He tore a strip of cloth from his robe and wiped the blood from the boy's face. "Why did you do that, boy?" Dusty spat out blood and muttered, "Because no one else would." The elder's eyes softened, and for a moment, something ancient passed between them, something that neither words nor time could erase. That night, the old man disappeared into the desert. Dusty thought he'd never see him again, but fate had other plans. The next morning, the town of Red Hollow woke to the sound of distant thunder, or so they thought. But it wasn't thunder. It was the sound of hooves. Hundreds of them. By sunrise, a cloud of dust rolled down the ridge, and from it emerged a sight that made every man drop his coffee, and every woman clutch her child. 100 native warriors rode in tight formation, their horses painted, their spears gleaming in the morning sun. At the front rode the elder from yesterday, now wearing a feathered mantle and beads that shimmered like firelight. Behind him, young braves rode silent and proud. The townsfolk panicked. The sheriff scrambled to gather his deputies, and the ranchers who had mocked the elder last night hid behind the saloon walls. The air was thick with fear, but the riders did not attack. They stopped at the edge of town, their horses snorting in the dust. The elder raised his hand and silence fell. Dusty, still bruised and weak, stood near the blacksmith's shop, watching with wide eyes. The elder looked straight at him and spoke in his native tongue, his words echoing across the silent street. Then, in broken English, he said for all to hear, "The boy who bled for an old man has honor greater than many warriors. We come not for war, but for him." The crowd murmured in disbelief. The sheriff stepped forward cautiously. "What do you want with the boy?" The elder dismounted, walking slowly toward Dusty. "He defended me when his own people turned away. In our way, that is sacred. He showed courage when others had none. My tribe wishes to offer him a place among us." Dusty was speechless. The town stared, mouths open. The same ranchers who had beaten him yesterday were now hiding behind barrels, too ashamed to speak. "You want him?" one whispered. "He's just a street rat." But Dusty wasn't just a boy anymore. The elder stood before him and said, "You have no home, no kin, no tribe. Come with us, and you will have all three." The offer struck something deep inside Dusty's chest. For the first time in his life, someone was offering him belonging, not pity, not scraps, but respect. He looked around at the town that had laughed at him, that had ignored his hunger and pain. Then he looked at the old man who waited patiently, his eyes filled with quiet strength. Dusty nodded slowly. "I'll come," he said. The elder smiled faintly and motioned for him to follow. The crowd parted as Dusty walked forward, limping slightly but holding his head high. As he climbed onto one of the spare horses, the elder raised his arm and signaled to the warriors. Together they turned and rode out of Red Hollow, their silhouettes swallowed by the golden horizon. Behind them, the townsfolk stood in stunned silence, realizing they had just witnessed something greater than pride or prejudice. They had seen the birth of a legend. The days that followed were unlike anything Dusty had ever imagined. The tribe welcomed him into their camp, a village nestled deep between red cliffs and green river valleys. At first he was shy, uncertain, but the people treated him as one of their own. The children laughed with him. The women shared food with him, and the warriors taught him the ways of the wild, how to ride, how to hunt, how to listen to the wind. The elder, whose name was Tahoma, became a mentor to him. "You defended me when the world turned away," Tahoma said one night by the fire. "Now we will defend you," Dusty learned quickly. He proved his worth in every task, from taming wild horses to gathering water under the burning sun. The tribe began to see him not as an outsider, but as a symbol of unity, proof that courage and compassion know no color or creed. One evening, while the sky burned red with sunset, the warriors gathered to honor him. The chief placed a hand on Dusty's shoulder and said, "You came to us broken, but you stand now as one of us. From this day forward you are Keone, he who defends." The tribe cheered. The drums echoed through the valley. And for the first time, Dusty smiled with pride. Back in Red Hollow, stories began to spread. The ranchers who had beaten the boy couldn't sleep at night, haunted by guilt and shame. Travelers spoke of a young white boy living among the tribes, carrying both peace and power wherever he went. Years later, when drought struck the plains and townsfolk were dying of thirst, it was Keone, once the homeless boy, who returned with his tribe, bringing water and food to the same people who had once turned him away. And as the people watched him ride into town, wearing the feathers of a warrior and the heart of a friend, they finally understood that true strength isn't in skin or blood, it's in spirit. If you loved this emotional and powerful Western story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of courage, redemption, and humanity from the Wild West. Don't forget to like, share, and comment your favorite part of the story. Your support keeps these stories alive.